Hi everyone, welcome back to Online Collective. We're Mark and Sarah, and it's great to have you with us again tonight. We'd really encourage you to use the chat, say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from. I don't know if you've been to a church before, but sometimes you can feel like you have to be a little bit quiet, but that is the opposite here. We really want you to say hello, tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. And one of the things that we'd love to encourage you to use the chat for is if you hear some words that you don't understand, we'd love you to ask what those words mean. Quite often when people have been a Christian for a while, they can start to use strange long words. We call it Christianese, but we want to make sure that at Online Collective we're making sense. And so we'd love you to ask us questions. If you don't understand something, the chat is the place to do it.
Yeah, and you might have noticed our new props that we've got this week. It's the first week in Advent, so we thought we'd get in the festive spirit, or at least I thought we'd get in the festive spirit. Let us know if you approve of our new props, or have you got your Christmas tree up at home? It might be that it's just about to run into a busy season. Why don't you tell us about your week, Mark? Have you had a busy week?
Well, I have had a busy week. When you work preparing for Christmas, everything is quite busy, but I'm really, really pleased that I don't work in retail anymore. So for 11 years, I worked for Apple. So every Christmas, I dreaded it because it just meant it was busier and busier and busier. So I'm really pleased that I don't work in retail. So if you do work in retail, I feel your pain, but I'm glad. I got a question for you though. We're talking about Christmas trees, real or fake?
We have both. If I had to choose one, I would definitely choose real.
What about you? What would you go for, real or fake? Let us know in the chat.
Yeah. So thinking about being busy and thinking about perhaps the weeks that you've had, we're going to spend this week, this particular Online Collective, thinking about being with Jesus. And we're going to hear a passage now, which is, it just starts off with Jesus walking along a lake. And this is the very start of Jesus's ministry. So he has quite literally got the whole world to save. And he is not striding out with a purpose, ready to meet people with an agenda. He's just strolling along by a lake. So let's just adopt that as well. As we think about our busy weeks, let's just slow it right down and just walk slowly like Jesus did.
As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will make you fishers of men." At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John. They were in the boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather and I'm part of the team at Church Collective. This week I have a brief thought to share about Advent, just beginning now, where the church reflects on the coming of Christ who brings light into the world. Advent draws on the symbolism of light. You may know the scripture from Isaiah 9, which speaks of seeing a light even amid great darkness. And I'd like to invite you to consider today that the light of Christ is not detached from your life, but instead comes right into the things that matter to you. I remember when I first encountered this, I was invited along to a cafe-style church by a friend. And firstly, I just remember the welcome I received, and not that they knew it, but they were really contradicting how I felt about myself and showing me what God thought of me. And then, my goodness me, we were asked to imagine what we would say to God if he was sitting in front of us on a chair. And actually all the room was kind of laid out in that way. And I sat terrified for about 30 seconds. And then, without even meaning to, I just came up with something in my head that was really simple, but really honest and really raw. And I just froze, waiting for the disapproval. Because I actually believed in God, but God to me was very distant and very remote. But instead, I had a strange experience where I felt such a wave of compassion for what I'd said, and a sense that there might just be a God who knew about it, but not only knew about it, but cared deeply about it as well. And so I want to propose to us today that Advent is not a naive season. It's not a season where we're told to turn our backs on the reality of this world, pretend that everything is sweetness and light. Rather, Advent is a season which speaks of hope, that even in the midst of the darkness, there is a love and a light that is unspoiled and that can never be decayed, and that is robust enough and powerful enough to stand through anything. And so I invite you to think about today this verse and this simple prayer. It's from Isaiah again, from chapter 43. From eternity to eternity, I am God. No one can snatch anyone out of my hand. No one can undo what I have done. Lord, thank you for your utterly unspoilt light. Help us to find you in all the questions of life that we may be grappling with today. Amen.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
We were at a wedding recently, and one of the questions you get asked when you don't know lots of people is, what do you do? And sometimes it can be really easy to answer, sometimes you're bored of your own answer, but the reality is we tend to live really ordinary lives. So actually, when I think about what I do, I am doing the school run, I'm going to work, I'm doing swimming lessons, I'm putting the washing on, I'm cooking the tea, all really boring, ordinary stuff. And that's exactly what the disciples were doing just before they were called. They were just doing their boring, ordinary, everyday life. They were just fixing and preparing nets. And they weren't particularly doing it with great pizzazz. They weren't doing it like the best in the world, but just ordinary, just normal, everyday skills. And Jesus saw them, and he saw them doing that. He saw them doing that ordinary thing, not the best in the world, perhaps, and he called them anyway. And that is a really exciting thing to think about when we think about Jesus can just call us in our ordinary, everyday life. So whatever gifts, whatever skills, whatever life setup you've got, Jesus can call you to something. And a really great example of that is our lovely Hannah Renison, who you met in the first week when she came and spoke, did a little interview with her husband Simon. And she's got lots of skills. And one of the things that Jesus has called her to more recently is to set up one of our other collectives. It's based in a park. And at the moment, it's predominantly working alongside mums and basically just pushing a pram chatting with them, chatting with their kids, and God is using her skills, her everyday life to meet with people and to share Jesus. So perhaps have a little think about the ways that your ordinary everyday life could be perhaps something that Jesus is calling you to do.
At Church Collective, we invite everyone to take part as we worship creatively, love generously, and serve locally. And the reason we do that is because it's what Jesus did, and we want to become like Jesus. And when we're with Jesus, we want to become like him, and we want to do what he did. And serving locally in our context might mean in our workplace, it might mean online, but it doesn't always have to be the most spectacular, huge thing. And I think Sarah's got a really good example of something which is fairly ordinary, but has actually made quite a big impact.
Yeah, in work, we decided to set up a bit of a kindness club. And the idea was that it's a bit like Secret Santa, but not at Christmas. And the idea was that you had a person that was allocated to you, and then you showed them kindness over a period of about 3 months or so. And it didn't have to be anything spectacular. It was a bar of chocolate or it was a little handwritten note. The only rule was you were not allowed to say it was you that had left it or give the game away in any way. And it was just a really enjoyable thing that we did at work. But what was completely lovely was that it became something that was more extraordinary than we had ever expected it to be. So nearly always someone had been given a gift the day after their bike had been stolen, or the day that they received some bad news. And I am holding this because this is a jar that I still don't know who gave it to me in work, and it's full of mindfulness challenges, and I got this on the day that I received some bad news as well, and that was totally unexpected to me. The person who bought it for me had no idea that bad news was coming, and actually God used what was a really ordinary little gift to really bless me, and I think there was quite a lot of extraordinary stories that came out of those ordinary things.
Yeah, that's great. And so on the back of that, what we want to do is challenge you this week to think of something that you could do to be ordinary, but to be a really positive influence on somebody else. And so as we play this very short video, we just want to encourage you to think about who you could write a message to this week on social media, or could you leave a really positive review on a blog or for a business, something that is really encouraging for somebody else. Online, there is just so many words that bombard people all the time, and they're not always very positive. So can we, as Online Collective, start to make that change in that culture by being positive online? At 9 o'clock, we're going to watch episode 3 of The Chosen. It fits really nicely into what we've talked about tonight, in that Jesus recognizes children before they've even achieved anything in life. He values them. So come back at 9 o'clock. The chat is going to stay open. We'll pop the link for episode 3 into the chat so you can watch it on your own device, whether you download the app or whether you watch it on a computer. But we'll leave the chat open so you can put your comments in, ask any questions, and it'd be great to have you with us.